Hi guys, again you're back with Jay. This is the fourth video in the tutorial series. So this one is just going to be for texturing the actual model. Now, before we move any further, I want all of you to just make sure you have actually got GIMP installed. GIMP is obviously the software we're going to be using to texture. As well as GIMP, you're going to need two other plugins. Now, I've put these links in the description anyway, but these two plugins that we're going to need for GIMP are completely free. If you go to code.google.com/p/GIMP-DDS, this is going to be the GIMP DDS plugin. Now DDS, I think it stands for Direct Draw something or other. I don't know, but it's a file type of image that's commonly used for game development, because it allows transparency, like decent file sizes, etc., etc., and also like MIP mapping as well. But that's for another tutorial. So we're going to be saving as DDS as the final textures. So you need this plugin enabled. So if you just go to that, like I said, I put the links in the bottom there. Depending on what system you've got, whether it's 32 or 64-bit, here's your choices here. I've already got this installed, I don't need to do it again. Oh, there you go, Direct Draw Surface. Okay, so just choose whichever one you want, save it, install it, just follow the instructions. It's really simple. It'll have all the information you need on this particular page. The next one is the normal map generator. Again, whichever system you've got, 32 or 64-bit, just choose yours. Download, install it, jobs are good. And once you've got those two installed, then you'll be able to carry on with the tutorial. Okay, so where we left off was Blender. You had something like this when I left you. On this side is obviously the model itself with the ambient occlusion map baked to it, so you can see these sort of realistic shadows coming on here underneath. We went through this last time. And on this side you will see it's the image viewer, and this is the texture itself that we've obviously put the cuts in, and this is how the texture looks when it's cut. Now one thing that I noticed when I loaded my Blender file up was mine didn't load in like this. Mine loaded in like this, just a black file. That's because we didn't save or apply the texture. So if yours is loaded in like this, then you're as stupid as I am and you didn't save. If you did save, bravo, well done. Just sit back and wait for the next couple of seconds whilst I explain what to do. So with the object highlighted, press tab to go into edit mode, or come down at the bottom here, edit mode. And then it's just literally a case of just going to this particular scene panel here, scrolling back down to the bottom, ensuring that everything is selected. You can ensure this by pressing A and then A again, just making sure everything's highlighted, and then come down. All this should still be on the same settings. Just hit bake again and it'll start baking it again, and there you go. Now we're back to where we left off. Okay. Another thing I have noticed is I just quickly did a bit of a run through on my own, just seeing if this texture would be sufficient enough. Unfortunately it's not. So what I want you to do is, with this model highlighted, press tab, go into edit mode, and then come over to this little cross here where it says concrete barrier. You need to hit that cross, it'll delete that texture. What we need to do is go into new, and we can say concrete barrier XL. Let's call it XL. So concrete barrier XL, and then where it says width 1024, change that to 2048. Press tab to go down, 2048 again. Okay, so you should have concrete barrier XL 2048, 2048, and just hit OK. So we've just quadrupled the image size. I know the numbers have doubled, but you've actually quadrupled the image size, because you can get 11024 in there, 11024 in there, one in there, and one in there. So it's quadrupled it. Now I want you to hit bake again. On some people's machines it might take a bit longer. I don't know what other people's machines have got. On mine it's fast enough for me. Okay, so now you'll see it's a little bit smoother than it was, a lot less bobbly. Not that that has a huge impact on the texture, because let's face it, concrete texture is pretty staticky anyway. So now what we're going to do, we're going to separate off the UVs. So everything on this entire model is going to be using pretty much the same texture, apart from these loops. These are going to have a separate texture. And when I say separate texture, I don't mean a separate one of these. I mean just a separate texture inside the same texture map. More of this will become clear once I stop gibbering. So what I want you to do is make sure you're on face select, which is down at the bottom, or you can get to that by pressing Control Tab, face select, hover over the loop, just one of the faces, and press L. Do the same again on this one, L, spin your model round, hover over, L, and then L. And you'll see on this here, it's highlighted these UVs. You don't want to do what I've just done. So yeah, it's highlighted these UVs here. So you go down to UVs and scroll up to the top, UV layout. Find your texture folder wherever you saved your ambient occlusion, not that it really matters. And then we're going to call this, I usually underscore it, name what it is, and then underscore again and UV just to tell me what it is so I don't get confused. So concrete barrier underscore loops underscore UV. It's just one way of saving it. Enter to confirm, enter to save. So now they have their own UVs, that's fine. And then we need to go into line select mode, and then just literally hit L. All of that selected, but you'll see the loops aren't selected. So now we just have the main base, just their UVs, so we can hit UVs, export UV layout, go back to your folder where you saved everything, textures, and you see concrete barrier loops, so you just change that to concrete barrier underscore, I'm just going to call this base underscore UV. You don't have to name it underscore UV, it's just what I'm used to. There we go, that's saved. And now, if we tab back into object mode, we'll see there's no UVs on here. This is just the ambient occlusion map. So to save this, you go to image, this little thing here, and then save as image. Make sure you're in the same folder where you save your textures, which we are. Concrete barrier XL underscore AO for ambient occlusion. Enter twice. It just saves it. It's quite a large file because we have, just like I said, quadrupled the texture size. So that's all we need to do in Blender for the moment. We can save that, Control S, overwrite, yes, that's fine, perfect. So minimize out of that. We need to open up GIMP. If it's not open, you can pause the video until it's open. So this is the folder where I saved my textures. For this tutorial, what I've done is I've downloaded 3 textures from CG Textures. Again, the links in the description. You can pause this video whilst we go and download those if you want. But what I've downloaded is this concrete texture, which is a seamless texture. This strange looking one, which is obviously a rectangle, not seamless. I've downloaded this one just for these little oddities. I'll show you why in a minute. And this rust texture. Okay, so it's just 3 textures, but I'll show you what I'm going to do with them now. So, without opening any particular file size on here, we go to File, New, 2048, 2048. Now we need this as high res as possible, so 300 pixels by 300 pixels. And I want a transparent background, so transparency just at the bottom there. Click OK. This will load in a blank image. So then, all we need to do is just open up the folder. We've got the textures. Locate the concrete barrier underscore ambient occlusion. Just drag that in and drop. And because it's 2048, it will fit perfectly. Okay. And then what we want is our UVs. So we've got our base UV here. Just drag that in. That will sit perfectly over it because again it's the same size. And the concrete barrier loops UV. Drag that in there. There we go. So now we have background, concrete barrier AO, the base UV and the loops UV. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate. No, I'm not actually. No, ignore me. I'm not going to duplicate that. Just carry on as usual. So now we need to bring in the actual concrete texture itself. Now, like I said, this is a seamless texture. Concrete bare 0323_7_s.jpg. So we drag that in, drag that to the top so we can work with it, and you'll see it's got this black outer. It's because it's a JPEG, and JPEG doesn't support alpha channels. So what we need to do is add an alpha channel to it, and we can do this by right clicking on the texture, and there's a hotkey for this which is H, but we can just scroll down to here, add alpha channel, and that just gets rid of that. So if we were to enlarge this image, you're not going to get black or white, it's just going to be transparency. So what we need to do here, just to align these perfectly, I know from looking at this texture that this one, whilst it's highlighted, is 700 by 700. Not the best number to be working with, but what we can do is go to View, Show Grid. You'll see loads of little dots, well, not dots but squares. Go to View again, Snap to Grid. So as you're moving it around, it'll be snapping to these little corner bits and lines and all sorts. Obviously that's not quite good enough, we're still going to be fiddling around. So what we need to do is go to Image, Configure Grid, and in here type in 700. If you just tab across, it will change that to 700 as well. Just make sure you hit OK there. Now what we're going to do here is we're going to just create an instance of these going across and then an instance of these three coming down, just to fill in these in gaps. So what we need to do is right click on this image, duplicate layer, or you can right click and hit U, and then with the move select tool activated, which is this thing here, or M on the keyboard, just going to drag this one across and you'll see it snaps perfectly in place. Okay, and duplicate this one again, right click and U, or right click and just scroll down to duplicate, and then move this one across. It'll snap in place. It'll overhang here. That's not necessary. That's not a worry at the moment. So now we need to merge these three images together, because you'll see they're all selected individually. We need to merge them down so they become one long rectangle. We do this by right clicking. We can either go to merge down, or you'll see W has an underscore under it. So you can right click and press W, and then all of those are one image now. So same thing again, we want to duplicate those and bring those down to there, and then those, and then down to there. So right click on the image, I don't know where it is, duplicate layer. See, I always use the hotkeys, I just don't want to confuse you guys. Drag this down, snap it in place, and then with that one selected, right click, U for duplicate, drag down, snap it in place, and then we just merge these down. So right click W, right click W, and you'll see it's got this overhang here. Now it's not a real issue, but if you're a bit of a perfectionist like me, you can right click inside your main image here, you can go to L for layer, and then layer to image size, and there you go, you just see it just snaps around there. Now these grid lines are going to get in our way, and they're going to make things snap unnecessarily, so we can go to View, Show Grid, but that will still make things snap, so we need to go to View, Snap to Grid. There we go. So now we can see the concrete texture. At 100% it looks a bit blurry to me, so what we're going to do is just sharpen that slightly. So we go to Filters, as you can see I've already been in here, Filters, I'll show you, Filters, Enhance, Sharpen. You might not have that many options, I've got quite a few plugins working for me at the moment. So as you can see here I've got 44. Now you don't want to go too much, because otherwise it can look a bit silly like that. You get a lot of noise, a lot of deformation of texture. I'd say around about 45 is working for me. 100%, yeah, that looks better. I like that. Okay, so what we need to do here is we need to cut out the concrete that is actually going to be used, and luckily we've got the UV here, so we drag the UV up above the concrete and just let go, and you'll see that you can see the UVs over the top. Now to make sure you can cut this out, instead of drawing a path or using your erase tool and doing that sort of thing, that'll take forever. What we need to do is come up to this hand that looks like it's selecting a colour, colour select, and then just make sure your UV's layer above the concrete is selected. Hover over any part of the UV. Actually no, there's an easier way. Hover over something that isn't part of the UV, so a transparent area, and click once. And it'll select all of the transparency around the UV. Select the concrete layer here, and just simply hit delete on your keyboard. Ta-da! And to unselect, it's either select none, or what I usually do is Control Shift and A. That does everything. But again, it's always up here, select none. Okay? So now that's done, we don't need that layer anymore. So you can either hit delete on your keyboard, that's fine, or if you actually want the layer gone, right click, delete layer. Okay, so that's that done. Now what we need is the rust texture. Sorry, I'm just hiding these layers by pressing the I, so I don't want to see them, I'm not interested. Now what we need to do is drag in that rust layer that I said. It's just there. Drag that in. Perfect. Drag that over. You can just see the UVs there. That's because I've got the concrete barrier underscore loops underscore UV that's active. So drag that over there. As you can see, it's black around it again, which means it's a JPEG, no alpha. Right click, add alpha channel. Alpha, for anyone that's not understanding, is just transparency, no colour. Okay, so we can't see the UVs underneath it, so we need to drag the UV layers up above it. Okay, so there we go. Same thing again, go to your colour select, click anywhere not on the UVs to select all of the alpha, and you'll see it selected the entire image, and just around the outside of each of these UVs, click on the rust and hit delete. And there we go. Again, keep on doing things too fast, sorry. These things are still selected, so select none. So there we go. We don't need these UVs anymore either. So again, we can right click, delete layer. So now you'll see we've got the concrete and this. And I know what you're saying, Jay, it looks rubbish. But wait. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab my eyedropper, which is just that tool there. I'm going to click onto the concrete and just select any random point. I'm not really fussed. Again, this isn't a necessary stage, this is just because I am a bit strange like that. And then I'm going to go down to this background layer which has nothing on it and just click. And that just fills in with a nice similar sort of colour to this. Don't ask me why I do that, it's just something. Okay, so now if we were to export this as an image, excuse me, my voice is giving up again. What I'm going to do, I've already created one there, you can see. I'm going to call it diffuse.png. I'm saving as PNG just whilst we're working with it, so we can actually see the image. Hit export, you won't get replaced. Export again, that's fine. Okay. So now, in Blender, with your model selected, all you need to do is come over to the images, and then, actually no, you need to go into edit mode on your model, sorry. These aren't selected, but we need everything selected, so you hit A again, and that gets everything selected, all of the UVs here are selected. Go to image, open image, and then you'll see I'm in my textures folder, diffuse, which is what we've just created. Double click, and you'll see, oh, but Jay, that looks crap. You're right, it does. It's because it has no ambient occlusion. Now if you were to apply a normal map, a specular map, and then chuck it in with some lighting, it might look alright. It probably would do actually, probably look quite nice. But as it stands, I don't like the look of it. I like adding a bit of natural shadows to my models. So what we're going to do is going to jump straight back into GIMP, and there's the ambient occlusion map that we brought in. So drag that to the top, let's see it. So then that's covering all of the textures underneath, which is not what we want, obviously. So with this selected, what we need to do is change the blending mode. And up here, just above this opacity bar, you'll see it says mode normal. And there's a little drop down arrow here. It changes from normal, dissolve, lighten only, screen, dodge, addition, yada 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 yada, all the way through. The one we want is multiply. And you'll see it just adds itself just enough to give everything the shadows. If I turn it off, you can see, and with, much better. Now what I like to do, again, just because I'm strange, what I like to do is right click on the ambient occlusion map and duplicate it. Just makes it that little bit stronger. I do like that. But again, that's me. You don't have to do that. That's just me being strange. And now, if we export to diffuse, you should already have the option there, or whatever you've called it. You should have the option there. All it'll do is just overwrite that file you've just created. Okay, with that done, jump back into Blender. Make sure your model is selected, which mine is. You can see the orange outer. Go into your image editor here, image, and then reload image. All that'll do is just reload, like refreshing the image that's saved. And there we go. That looks a bit better, doesn't it? That's what it'll look like in the engine. Much nicer. Wasn't that nice and simple? There we go. Now what you could do, I don't want to rabbit on too long. I mean, I could do an advanced texturing tutorial, but for this one I think I'm just going to leave it there. I was going to add in a bit more detail. Yeah, I will. I'll add in more detail. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag in this other texture that you downloaded. Drag that one in. And all I'm going to do is just overlay it on one of these sides. Obviously we need to right click, add alpha channel, and I'm going to shrink it down. Now to shrink, you can either go to, I don't know where the buttons are, I always just use the hotkeys. It's Shift and T, and you'll see it brings up this grid around it, these things on the corners and in the middle. This circle in the middle means you can move it around whilst you're going to scale it. Now what we want to do is lock the aspect ratio, which is that thing there. Just make sure that chain's joined up, and then you can drag one of these corners. Just drag that down. It doesn't matter what size really. This is just me again, just messing around. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to drop it there, and then once you're happy with that, you hit scale, and it scales it. It's a good one. And again, we're going to use another blending mode, but what I want first is I want this yellow dotted area to go away, because I want to see how well it blends in with the texture behind it. So I'm going to right click, layer, layer to image size, and that basically makes the image the same size as the rest of it. Okay, so what we can see here is this particular image that we've just brought in is a lot blurrier than this one here. So what we need to do is add the same effect, which is a sharpen effect, to the one we've just brought in, which is filters. We can go on to reshow sharpen. You could have just hit repeat sharpen, but let's just do this for practice. We can see it's stayed on 45. Hit OK. Okay, that's given some strange line on the outside. Don't know why. What I'm going to do is just grab my erase tool, and you can click once just on the corner of that image. Go down to the bottom corner. Don't click. Press and hold Shift, and you'll see it's drawn a line. Just line that up. There we go. Click again. Go to the next corner, press and hold Shift. Click again. Click again, press and hold Shift. Up to the other corner, and click. Click again, up to the next corner, and click. We just got rid of that white line. That was just all that was bothering me. So on this blend mode, we're just going to try a couple and see what happens. See what happens on screen. Yeah, that looks great. That looks really good. Let's try multiply. Don't like that one. Overlay. Don't like that one. Darken only. No, all I'm trying to get is this bit here. So if I just go to normal, okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to increase my brush size. That'll do. I'm going to increase the fall off, which is just by choosing these brushes here. I'm going to put it on the biggest fall off, which is that blurry brush. Basically means if I can just click, 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 and just click and click and click until you're happy with how it looks. You don't have to click, you can drag as well, but all I'm going to do is leave a bit of the whiter stuff around the crack to almost show like it's had damage done to it. So there you go. You may look at it and think it looks a bit daft, but hey, it looks cool. I quite like that. It's just that unique bit just on that one side. Okay, so it's probably wise to save your image just anywhere, just concrete barrier diffuse, enter. Okay, so there you go. Now I've just saved that, but we still need to export to overwrite the original PNG image that we're using, and that is, if we just go in here, reload image, there you go, you got the damage on that side. Because if it's facing that way, you're going to have one barrier, but you can spin it round and you've got two barriers, you see. Just gives you that bit of variety. Breaks it up. Hit save, control save. Good, good. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we need to make the specular map and the normal map for these. So what we need to do here is, there's a couple of ways of doing this, but what I like to do is right click on the top image, and then new from visible. All that does is get all of this information we can see and turns that into one layer. So it's gathered these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 layers and turned it into one layer. So we can turn all of these off and we've just got this one layer here. So what we're going to do is go to filters, map, normal map. Like I said, you should have had your normal map plugin installed already. Let's hit that, and then this will bring up the normal map options. So what I'm going to do is, what I tend to do, I don't know how I made it that big, that's insane. What I'm going to do is on the scale option, I normally go to about 6 or 7. I don't like overdoing normal maps. Sometimes I think it can make things look a bit wet. This might be wet, it's outside, that's fine. So yeah, take that scale up to 6 by using these little click arrows. Enter. And there you go. It's a cheating way, it's a bit of a lackadaisical method, but it's effective, it works, it's cheap, it's easy. So go to save, export, and then we're going to call this one normal. Should really be saving them as DDS, but I'll show you that in a minute. Okay, so that's the normal map. So we can, what I'm going to do, I'm just going to use that same image, Control Z to undo the normal map, and then I'm going to duplicate this image, right click, duplicate layer. Now what I'm going to do with this one is something called edge detect, and then I'm going to go to neon, and you'll see this is what it looks like. Quite peculiar, really. And you'll be able to find more information on this. What we're doing at the moment is making a specular map. There's more information about this from, most of you will know the TGC artist, Bond1. He's quite heavily involved in FPSC-Reloaded. I think he's making the majority of the assets. He's a very talented artist. I learnt this technique from him. It does make a much more realistic looking specular map. I'm nowhere near his talents, so I'm probably going to do it a little bit differently, probably get it wrong, it's not going to look as good, but hey ho. So what I'm going to do is just going to turn the radius down, mainly because I just want just the minor highlights. I don't want to go overzealous with this. What's this amount doing? Okay, so I've got it on 1.34 and 0.07. That's what I've done. You click OK, and then it does that. Okay, now this isn't the specular map. Oh, we need a grayscale. Colors, desaturate. Okay, it doesn't matter which option you chose then, but color desaturate is important. So now we've got that. All that does is accentuate the highlights on the edges of things, which is good for a specular map because it brings out the detail. Okay, so with this image, the one we duplicated, what we're going to do is just literally colors, desaturate. I usually go with luminosity. I don't know why. It's just again one of them things. Colors, brightness, and I'm going to adjust the brightness down. I'm going to take the brightness all the way out, and then I'm going to bump the contrast up. To about to about 28. Okay, so now we've got these two peculiar looking images. What we're going to do is drag this darker one, which is this one, the really dark one with the sort of white jiggly lines in there. We're going to drag that up top, and we're going to go to the blend mode, and we're going to screen it. And all that's done is it takes out all of the darker stuff and only adds the light stuff. Can you see how it highlights these lines inside there? Just highlights them. So yeah, that's fine. Quite like that. I'm going to merge this one down so it's like that. I'm actually gonna, what I want to do is I want to make the rest of the image darker while retaining some specularity on these loops. So what I'm going to do is get my lasso tool up here. I'm going to click around these loops, and I'm going to zoom out. So with those selected, I want to invert the selection, so you can go selection, invert, or on the keyboard Control I. So that means everything else other than those will be affected. So now I can go back to colors, brightness, contrast, and just turn the brightness down somewhat. Okay. That's fine. It looks a bit peculiar, but this background isn't going to be going into anything. So with that done, what we need to do is we need to sharpen this. We need to go silly with the sharpen on this. Well, not silly, but we need to go a lot more than we did before. Now keep in mind, this has already been sharpened once as an actual image. We want this to give out the sort of, in fact that'll do, to be honest. That will do. I quite like that. 45 again. Okay. So now we have a lovely specular map. Export and then call this specular. Enter. Export. Perfect. So now in your texture folder you will have the diffuse. I can't drag these around. Diffuse, normal, and specular. What you can do is just make sure you've saved this. Close that GIMP window, and then with this, it would have been faster if I just saved it as DDS in the first place, but again, I'm not a professional. File, export. All you need to do is just change this suffix to DDS. Now because there's no alpha needed, there's no windows, there's no sort of wire mesh we're trying to mimic, we don't need to change any of this. I never change this unless I'm trying to add an alpha. So just keep these settings the same. OK. Close that one down. Diffuse, drag that in. Export. Again. Oh, it's saved that for me, so diffuse.dds, export. OK. Close that down. We haven't got specular, so specular, drag that in, file, export, it's saved DDS, perfect, export. OK. Right. We have the necessary file, so there's a diffuse, there we go, cool. That's everything for this video. In the next tutorial, I'm going to show you how to make sure that your model is scaled proportionally, so you know it's going to look the right size in Reloaded. And then obviously we are actually just going to be exporting the model with all the textures, creating the FPE, and assigning the shader so it sinks in and looks good inside Reloaded. So that's everything for this one. Thanks for watching. Hit like if you liked it, hit subscribe. Yeah, thanks for watching.